I started going to the café on Oak Street because it opened early, earlier than my thoughts usually did. I told myself it was for the coffee, but that wasn't really true. It was her. Mara. She worked the morning shift, mid-40s, maybe older, depending on the light. She had that kind of beauty that didn't announce itself, the kind that made you look twice only after she'd already walked away. The regulars called her the widow, not cruelly, just as a fact everyone accepted but didn't talk about. I never asked her about it, though I caught myself wondering if she ever slipped and said we instead of I. Most mornings, I sat by the window, laptop open, pretending to study. She'd pass by with a tray, ask if I wanted my usual, and I'd nod. Same small talk, same rhythm. Medium roast. 2 sugars. You remembered, I said once. She smiled without looking at me. Some people are easy to remember. That line sat in me all day, longer than it should have. The next morning, I noticed her nails, short, neat, a faint shimmer of polish that caught the light when she poured coffee. It made me think of someone trying to start again, someone who still took care to be seen. I didn't know why that thought made my chest ache. There was something about the way she filled silence. Not with words, but presence. The sound of her setting down a cup, the soft exhale when she stretched her neck, the way her eyes lingered on the door after someone left, like she was waiting for a memory to walk back in. That morning, the café was quiet. Rain tapping the windows, the kind that makes everything sound softer. She brought over my coffee without asking. I tried to thank her, but the words caught halfway. She noticed. Rough morning? I shrugged. Just thinking too much. That's how it starts, she said, wiping the table beside mine. Then you start feeling too much. I looked up. Her tone wasn't teasing. It was, tired. Or maybe honest. You say that like it's a bad thing, I said, trying to sound casual. It's not bad, she said, glancing at me. It's just, expensive. She walked away before I could ask what she meant. For the rest of the day, I couldn't focus on anything. My screen stayed blank. My thoughts kept circling back to her, the quiet certainty in her movements, the way her smile looked like it came from some private, well-kept place. That evening, I passed the café again, lights off, chairs stacked. Her car was still there. A small sedan, clean but old. She sat inside for a moment before driving off, head resting on the steering wheel, like she was deciding whether to go home or not. I watched from across the street, feeling intrusive, but unable to move. The next morning, when I walked in, she wasn't at the counter. A new girl was there. I tried not to ask, but the words came out anyway. Mara's off today. She said she might stop by later, the girl replied, ringing up my order. I nodded, heart doing something strange I couldn't name. I sat in my usual spot, staring at the window. Half an hour passed before I noticed the folded napkin beside my cup. My name was written on it in careful handwriting. Stay a little after closing. I looked around, but she wasn't there. Outside, the rain had started again, soft, familiar. I folded the napkin, slipped it into my pocket, and waited without really knowing what for. It was the first time in months that I didn't leave when I said I would. I showed up early that evening, not sure if I should've. The café lights were dim, half the chairs stacked. The only sound was the hum of the espresso machine cooling down. Mara was there, hair loose this time, apron already off. She looked surprised, but not displeased. I didn't think you'd actually stay, she said, drying her hands on a towel. I wasn't sure I should, I admitted. Good, she said softly. Means you thought about it. There was no flirtation in her tone, not really. Just a calm acceptance that unnerved me more than any obvious invitation could. She poured tea for both of us, the kind that smelled faintly of citrus. We sat at the counter, the air thick with unspoken reasons why we shouldn't be there. I used to drink this with my husband, she said, eyes on the cup. He said it tasted like patience. I never really got what he meant until he was gone. She didn't look at me when she said it, and I didn't know if I was supposed to answer. The silence stretched between us, long enough for me to notice the faint line on her ring finger where the sun still remembered him. I'm sorry, I said finally. It sounded small, almost childish. Don't be, she replied. It's been 4 years. I've learned to talk about him like he's just someone I used to know. The way she said that, someone I used to know, made something in me tighten. I thought about how easily people fade out of each other's lives, how absence becomes routine. You must have loved him a lot, I said quietly. I did, she answered, then smiled faintly. But love doesn't always survive in the same shape. Sometimes it just settles. I nodded, pretending to understand. We sipped our tea. Rain drummed lightly outside, the kind that turns streetlights into watercolor. She leaned on her elbow, studying me like she was trying to remember where she'd seen me before. You remind me of someone, she said. Not him. Me. When I was your age. Always waiting for someone to notice that I was already grown. That hit harder than I expected. I looked away, pretending to check my phone, though there was nothing there. I don't know what you mean, I said, though I did. I think you do, she said, smiling. The clock above the counter ticked loud in the silence that followed. She stood, gathering the mugs, brushing past me, a small, accidental touch at my wrist. Warm. Barely there. But it sent a pulse through me that made it impossible to breathe right for a moment. She noticed. That's enough tea for tonight, she said gently. I laughed under my breath, not sure what I was laughing at. As she turned off the lights, she reached for her coat, paused, and handed me a small thermos. You left this last week, she said. I didn't, I said. I know, she replied, meeting my eyes. Take it anyway. Her smile was quiet, knowing, almost sad, the kind that said everything she wouldn't. I took the thermos. It was still warm. The next few mornings, she wasn't there. Different baristas, different music, same table by the window. I told myself it didn't matter, that maybe she was just taking time off. But every time the door opened, I looked up. Every single time. When she finally returned, it was a Thursday, the kind of morning where the sun felt lazy and everything smelled faintly of rain. She walked in wearing a scarf, hair tied up, and for a second, I forgot to breathe. You've been scarce, I said as she set down my coffee. I could say the same, she replied, eyes flicking toward the thermos sitting on my table. I'd brought it back. Unopened. I tried to smile. Didn't want to return it cold. She paused. Things don't always stay warm, no matter how we try. There it was again, that tone, soft but cutting. She was testing me, maybe testing herself too. We didn't talk for a while. Just the faint clinking of cups, the shuffle of customers. Then the bell over the door chimed, my friend Ben walked in, laughing too loud, scanning for a seat. Hey, man. Didn't know you came here this early, he said, clapping my shoulder before noticing Mara behind the counter. Oh, you work here? Mara smiled, professional again. Most days. He leaned toward me. She's kind of, don't, I muttered. He laughed anyway, oblivious, ordering something he didn't need. When she brought him his drink, she didn't look at me. Not once. And somehow that hurt more than I expected. After he left, I gathered my things. She caught my hand lightly as I reached for the cup. Just her fingertips against my wrist. Don't let people make you smaller than you are, she said quietly. Even when they mean well. Her voice trembled at the edge of something she wasn't saying. I swallowed. You sound like you've had practice. Her smile faded. Practice makes distance. Then she let go. That night, I walked past the café again. Lights off, same quiet as before. Her car was there, again. This time, I didn't just watch. I knocked on the window. She rolled it down halfway. Couldn't sleep, she asked. Neither could you, I said. The heater hummed between us. Her hand rested on the steering wheel, thumb tracing invisible lines. I wanted to reach out, to ask what she was so afraid of. But something stopped me. Maybe the look in her eyes, that mixture of want and restraint, of someone who'd already lost too much once. She looked at me then, really looked. The kind of look that holds you in place. I shouldn't, she whispered. I know, I said. Me neither. We stayed like that, two silhouettes in the glow of a streetlight, the world muffled and half asleep. Then she leaned forward just slightly, close enough for me to see the reflection of my own hesitation in her eyes. For a heartbeat, everything else, the rain, the glass, the noise in my head, disappeared. Then she pulled back. A breath caught, then released. Go home, she said softly. Before I forget how to mean it. And just like that, the moment folded itself shut. It had been 3 days since that night in her car. 3 days of pretending nothing had shifted. She still poured my coffee. I still said thanks. We both lingered a little too long at the counter, then looked away. The silence between us had changed shape, no longer empty, but crowded with what neither of us dared to say. That afternoon, the café closed early for repairs. She found me outside, sitting on the curb with my backpack. Walk with me, she said. Not a question. We ended up by the small park 2 blocks over, the one with the worn benches and cracked fountain. The air smelled of wet leaves and early evening. She sat, pulling her coat tighter, and gestured for me to join her. I almost didn't ask you, she said. I thought maybe it was better to just let things fade. I laughed under my breath. We're already pretending nothing's there. Isn't that the same thing? She looked at me then, steady, tired, beautiful in a way that didn't need light. You think it's easy for me? She asked. I didn't answer. I didn't know how. She went on, voice quieter now. I told myself I was just being kind. That I liked your company because it reminded me I'm still here. But it's more than that, isn't it? Her words came out half-broken, almost an apology. I felt my chest tighten. You don't have to say it. But I already did, she said. Just not out loud. Wind stirred the trees, leaves brushed the pavement. We sat in it, the silence thick and aching. Then she said, you know, my husband was the last person who made me laugh at nothing. After he died, I didn't think I'd ever do that again. Then you came in with that terrible laptop and ordered coffee you didn't even like. I smiled despite the lump in my throat. You noticed that? I notice everything, she said softly. That's my problem. Her hand was resting on the bench between us. I could see the faint tremor in her fingers, not from cold, but from holding back. I wanted to reach out. Every part of me did. But I didn't move. She exhaled, almost laughing. You're too young for this. For what? For looking at me like I'm still someone worth wanting. That line stayed in the air. I finally spoke. Maybe it's not about age. Then what? She asked. Maybe it's about timing, I said. And how sometimes, we get it wrong. She looked away then, blinking hard, her jaw tightening like she was fighting something inside herself. I don't want to get this wrong, she whispered. I turned toward her. For a second, just one, the distance between us vanished. Her hand brushed against mine, deliberate this time. Neither of us breathed. Then she pulled away slowly, eyes fixed on the ground. Let's not ruin what's already breaking, she said. The words hurt more because she said them gently. I didn't see her the next morning. Or the next. By the fourth day, even the new barista noticed me hesitating at the counter, scanning the cafe like someone had misplaced a piece of the room. "She's on leave," the girl said. Didn't say why. Just left her apron and a note. The word leave sank in slow. Like something dissolving instead of breaking. I nodded, pretending I didn't care, but I stayed long enough for my coffee to go cold. That night, I walked past her house. Not to see her, that's what I told myself, just to walk. The curtains were drawn. Porch light off. But her car was there, parked crooked, as if she'd come home distracted. I almost knocked. My hand even hovered near the door once. But I didn't. The thought of her opening it and seeing me, what would I even say? "I missed you." I'm not supposed to. I left instead. Days turned into a week. The silence was its own kind of noise, heavy, constant. Every part of my routine still had her shadow in it, the napkin dispenser she always straightened, the thermos now sitting unopened on my desk. I tried to delete her number twice. Couldn't. Then, one evening, just before closing time, I saw her again. She was standing outside the cafe, not in uniform. Civilian clothes, hands tucked in her coat, eyes somewhere far away. When she saw me, her face didn't move at first. Then came that smile, quiet, restrained, practiced. "Hey," I said. "Hey," she echoed. Her voice was steady, but softer somehow. "You disappeared." "I needed to," she said simply. A pause. The kind that hurts more than shouting. "I thought maybe I'd done something," I said. "You didn't," she said quickly, then added, "That's the problem." She gestured to the cafe window. "You remember the man who used to come for decaf every Friday?" I nodded. "That was my husband's brother. He told me you remind him of my husband when he was younger. Said it was nice to see me smiling again." She laughed once, dry, not joyful. I didn't know how to tell him why I was smiling. I didn't know what to do with that. She looked at me then, eyes glassy but sharp. "You deserve something that can last." "I don't." "That's not for you to decide," I said quietly. "I already did," she replied, taking a step back. A car passed, its headlights cutting through the space between us. When the light faded, she was already walking away. Back home, I opened my phone. A blank message box waited, cursor blinking like a heartbeat. "You said I didn't do anything wrong." I typed it, stared at it, deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally, I just saved her name in my contacts as M. Nothing else. No last name. No title. Just the initial that carried too much meaning. The message stayed unsent. The thermos stayed unopened. And her door stayed closed. 2 weeks passed before I saw her again. It was late evening, just before the cafe closed. The windows fogged from the rain outside, the smell of wet pavement mixing with coffee grounds and faint lemon cleaner. I wasn't planning to go in, I was just walking past, but habit has its own kind of gravity. She was behind the counter again. Same hands, same calm. But there was something different in her face, less guarded, maybe more tired. When she saw me, she froze for half a second before managing a quiet, "Hi." "Hi," I said back. The air between us felt fragile, like if either of us spoke too loudly it might crack. "Do you want your usual?" she asked. "Do you?" I said. That made her laugh, just a breath, but it was enough. She poured 2 cups without asking and motioned for me to sit at the corner booth. The cafe was empty except for the hum of the fridge and the soft patter of rain against glass. We sat across from each other, both pretending to watch the window. "I didn't mean to disappear," she said finally. "I just panicked. I figured. I thought if I stepped back, it would fade. And She smiled faintly. Turns out feelings don't work on timers. I nodded, tracing my finger along the rim of my cup. You could have told me. I didn't know how, she admitted. You make me feel like I'm standing too close to something I've already lost once. It's not your fault, but it's real. Her voice cracked a little, and she looked down. The sight of her, this woman who always seemed in control, unraveling, even slightly, hit harder than I expected. I reached across the table. Not her hand, just the edge, close enough that if she wanted to bridge the distance, she could. She didn't move right away. Then slowly, her fingers slid over mine. Warm. Familiar. Trembling. I keep telling myself it's wrong, she whispered. That I'm supposed to know better. But every time you walk in, it feels like something stops hurting. I wanted to say something, anything that would make sense of what this was, this impossible tenderness, but all I could manage was, it's the same for me. She looked up then, really looked. Her eyes were wet, but steady. Then maybe that's enough, she said. Even if it's just for tonight. We didn't kiss. We didn't have to. The clock ticked past closing time. Somewhere, a streetlight flickered. When I finally stood to leave, she followed me to the door. For a second, we just stood there, two people who had run out of ways to say what they meant. Then she reached up, adjusted my collar, and smiled that small, knowing smile. Take care of yourself, she said. You too. As I stepped out into the rain, she stayed in the doorway, watching. Neither of us waved. Neither of us looked away too soon. Just that, a shared silence, warm and breaking. And somehow, it felt like goodbye and understanding at the same time. By the time winter thinned out, everything had settled. The air was lighter, the streets quieter. The café had a new coat of paint and a different menu board, but most mornings, it still smelled like the same medium roast and lemon cleaner. I didn't go as often at first. Maybe out of pride. Maybe fear. But some habits have roots deeper than we realize. One morning, 8:47 a.m. exactly, I pushed open the door and there she was. Mara. Same steady posture, same calm rhythm, pouring tea into a chipped white mug. She looked up when she heard the bell. No surprise this time. Just recognition. You're early, she said, voice soft, familiar. Old habits, I replied. She nodded, sliding my cup toward me. Black coffee. 2 sugars. She still remembered. The first few minutes passed in silence, easy this time. Not the heavy kind that used to hang between us, but the kind that fits comfortably, like an old sweater you stop trying to fix. How's the new job? She asked. Fine, I said. Less people. More quiet. You like quiet, she said. I used to, I replied. She smiled, eyes on her tea. Me too. We ended up walking to the park after her shift, same cracked fountain, same weathered bench. The trees were bare, their branches scribbling across a pale sky. She brought her thermos this time, the same one she'd once handed me. It still had a faint dent near the lid. I found it in my cabinet, she said, pouring 2 cups. Didn't realize I'd kept it. Maybe you did, I said. Maybe I did, she echoed, smiling. The tea steamed between us, the scent familiar, citrus and something like patience. We talked about small things, her garden, my classes, the new neighbor who kept parking too close to her driveway. Every now and then, our hands brushed when she passed me the thermos lid. Neither of us flinched. Her hand found mine, fingers fitting like they'd been waiting for something still, something real. We sat there until the tea went cold. When she finally stood, she brushed off her coat and said, "See you tomorrow?" "Yeah," I said. "Same time." She smiled, the quiet kind, the one that used to end things. Only this time, it began something instead. As she walked ahead, I stayed on the bench a moment longer, watching the light catch in her hair, hearing the faint echo of her words in the cold morning air. People don't fall in love all at once. Maybe she was right. Maybe it just happens, in the quiet, when no one's watching.